Okay. Well, with that, we will begin the first session of our Connecting Faith and Business Succession Planning series. Welcome to round one of our four-part series. This is our banker panel. We are really excited for this succession planning series. We are bringing together key partners of the Ampac Business Capital entrepreneur ecosystem, bringing together Ampac Business Capital, who is an SBA lender and an agency dedicated to advancing entrepreneurial dreams, the Cal Baptist University Family Business Center, and Leading in Style. Today, we will have an amazing panel on how do you plan for succession planning from a perspective of a banker, hosted by our phenomenal moderator, Janice Graham. Janice Graham is the CEO of Leading in Style and will be hosting our panel today. Janice?
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, everyone. I am so pleased that you are here because we are starting Succession, the movement. This is going to be a great series. This is just the beginning. And I want to give you an idea of our why and then a little bit of a structure of how we're going to do the panel today. And we are going to definitely make sure to leave time on the back end for questions. The purpose of this is really to really get business owners to start having a conversation. I had a wonderful conversation with Hilda and Brian and Dr. Keenan, and we're all on the same page that business owners need information. And oftentimes that information needs to come in little bite-sized pieces. We want to make it palatable. We don't want to overwhelm you, but we do want you to have the information to get started. So today, as with each of our panels that we have, here's the structure. We will have a professional advisor, and the professional advisor is one that you probably need, actually. So this initial meeting will have our business banker, which I will introduce in a moment, and we will have one business that has exited, or one former business owner, I should say. And we can learn from those who have exited and some of the challenges or triumphs that they've had. And then we will have a business owner that is currently in business who has, probably like you, either thought about succession planning or has not thought about it. I feel like that's the masses. As a matter of fact, I know it's the masses. Over 99% of the businesses in the United States are small businesses. And of those businesses, only 35% have a plan in place. So we could do the math, and we know there's plenty of you out there that are looking for information, and we're so pleased to be able to bring this series to you. Now, when it comes to our panelists, we are going to ask them to do self-introductions because we think that what they have to say about themselves and their journey is far greater than what we can give justice to. So I will introduce our three panelists, and let's see, I don't believe, is Dr. Keenan here yet? We have Deborah Murphy, and Deborah Murphy is the Vice President and Relationship Manager with Citizens Business Bank. Deborah and I have known each other for a long time, and I know she has a really great story. If she doesn't remember it, I do. Our panelist that is an existing business is Palbinder Badesha. She's the owner of Express Professional Services here in the Corona and Riverside area. And first of all, she's hilarious. But I think she's going to give some great insight that will make you all feel just a little bit normal. And then our third panelist is Dr. Keenan Alderson. And Dr. Keenan is the professor and director of the Family Business Center at California Baptist University. And Dr. Alderson has an amazing story of his own, of a business that has exited. And I'm going to keep you guessing as to what it's about. He'll tell you, but it's going to be quite interesting. So let's start with Deborah. Deborah, would you like to introduce yourself and share a little bit about you and your background?
Well, thank you, Janice. Hi, I'm Deborah Murphy. As Janice said, I'm a Vice President and Portfolio/Relationship Manager with Citizens Business Bank. I have had a long and successful career in banking. I won't tell you how many years because then you'll start doing the math. But throughout my years in banking, I've had different leadership roles at different financial institutions. So I brought up on the operation side of the bank. I'm now on the business banking and the lending side, assisting businesses with all of their financing, their banking, their lending needs, and all the different variables that go into that. So thank you very much, Janice.
Thank you, Deborah. Halvinder, will you introduce yourself?
Hello. No video. Okay, got it. My name is Palbinder Badesha. I became a franchise owner my first time in business 17 years ago next week. And I bought a franchise of Express Employment Professionals. We're 40 years old as a company this year. And I really wanted a business that helped people. It's been a journey. I love it, but our product is people. And so we survived. I opened in 2006 and survived the Great Recession, basically by not paying myself. But it's been a journey, and certainly has been a lot of changes since COVID pandemic, but we continue to move forward. Thank you.
And I believe Palbinder is the immediate past chair of something.
Corona Chamber of Commerce. Yes, very heavily involved in business and networks, but also supporting and sponsoring nonprofits. I do feel that that's an important part of being in business, is being embedded in your local community.
Wonderful. Thank you, Palbinder.
Thank you.
Dr. Keenan Alderson. Can I call you Dr. Keenan?
Just Keenan.
Oh, well, here's Keenan.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I have a pretty unique perspective on this subject matter. I was a member of a family business for 17 years, and the purpose of it was to pass it on eventually to, my brother and just keep it going. That was the purpose. We didn't quite make it. And that caused me to become very interested in studying family businesses. So that's what I did my doctoral work on. I studied second generation family business decision making. And now I'm the director of the Family Business Center here at California Baptist University, where we help family firms do things such as succession, write a succession plan, leadership and development, help family firms become more successful. So when Janice teased me up, the horror story of my family business that didn't make it.
Yes, you do. I told him, it's like, I'm not going to tell any secrets here. Thank you, Keenan. Deborah, I would like to start with you because I remember very clearly, probably 10 or 15 years ago, a specific conversation we had, but I'm going to ask you to start out. Is there problematic areas that you've experienced with who do or do not have succession plans? And what is the ideal scenario?
Thank you, Janice. And I remember that exact conversation we had. And I think it was at a networking event for Corona Women's Business Partnership back in the day, sponsored by the city of Corona. And I've got a couple of others that I've experienced, and two of them not so great, and one that actually was really successful. But the first one that we were talking about, Janice, I had been out on, being a relationship banker, we go out, we meet with our clients in person, in their offices, or their business locations. So I went out and I met with two business owners, very successful business owners, very successful privately held grocery store, kind of like a Gelson's Market, but even more upscale, if you can imagine. And very successful in business. And I met with them, and on the way in, I met one of their sons that was working for them. Had a great conversation with them. We had quite a few loans with them, and we had their building loan as well. And so, part of it is getting financial updates, but also understanding, since I was new to managing their relationship, how their business runs, who operates, who does what, and had a great conversation. And during part of our conversation, I asked, do you have a succession plan in place? Do you have key man life insurance in place? And the answer was no, no, and no when I was asking questions. So they said that they had started the discussion like a year or so before, but hadn't done anything about it. And of course, being with larger banks that I have been with, we've got our own trust. We've got, the capability to introduce our clients to the key people they need to be in their inner circle to help them, their trusted advisors, to help them put business succession plans into place. So had a great conversation, great meeting, left and went back. About 3 weeks later, I received word that one of the two business owners passed away suddenly. It was devastating for the community. It was devastating for the business. It was devastating for the family, but they had no succession plan in place. And in that case, from the perspective of being a banker, a lender, in the event that a key owner or somebody passes away and they were 50% owner, what happens? And for a lender, it means that's an event of default. And they're already going through so much, and then now they've got this event of default because from a banking perspective, our loans and our credit extensions are in jeopardy. Who's going to repay them? How long is this going to take? And so it took a couple of years to work through this. And we worked through it with the borrower, but it's not something that's not comfortable from us, from the lending perspective, but it's definitely not comfortable, as Keenan had indicated earlier, when, you don't want the business to fail. You put so much into it, you want to pass it down. And some of these businesses are 2 and 3 generations old. You don't want to lose that business because a good succession plan wasn't put into place. So I think that's the story you were referencing. Is that correct, Janice?
Absolutely. I don't think people realize how it affects the lender.
Well, it does. It actually triggers an event of default. And if I can share my next story, it's a good one, which just happened last year with a client. This gentleman, managing member of a family-owned business, and it was just him. He has no brothers and sisters. His one sister had passed away 5 or 6 years ago, and so niece had a minority ownership of 15% in the company. But my client, Don, did not have ownership, but he managed the business since his father had passed away in the 80s. Mom was a silent owner, if you will. She did not materially participate in the business. And Mom passed away last year suddenly. And, so again, that triggers an event of default. But the amazing thing here is when Don's father passed away in the 80s, they had the thought of looking forward. They had trusted advisors. They actually took out life insurance policies, death policies, key man life, those type of insurance policies. And they've been paying on those policies all these years. And so when I sat down with the client, he said, Deborah, here it is. There's a lot of unwinding that needs to be done. We have 2 different insurance policies coming, and I'm talking $600,000-$700,000 in insurance policies that were put into place to help with taxes, and the transfer of assets and everything. And I'm happy to say they did everything right. I was able to sit down with our credit administrators and talk through, and we worked with the client. And so for us, it wasn't a painful event of default because they had put everything into place to be able to have business continuity, the transition of management and ownership. And then they gave the thought of taxation and the financial planning aspect of it, which again allows the business to continue successfully. So as a matter of fact, I spoke to this client about 2 weeks ago. He says, we've got about $280,000 left of this monies. And can I get your financial advisor on the investment side to give me a holler? I want to place that into something a little bit longer term. But we're also looking at some additional insurance for myself as well as part of our business continuity plan. So that's a really good story. They did everything right. And it was terrible. When I spoke to Don, when a few days after his mom passed, he called me and told me, and the man literally was very upset on the telephone, which made my heart feel really bad. But just having the right plan in place certainly takes a terrible situation and actually helps it move along much easier and much smoother.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. The thing people don't realize, there's a law, and you get to continue on. It's not your business, but you do continue on. So thank you, Deborah. All right, Mr. Keenan, same question for you. Uh-oh. Look, I think you're on mute, Keenan. There we go.
There we go. Janice, can you provide the question again, please?
Yes, sure. It's we're looking at problematic areas that you've experienced with succession.
Got it.
The ideal scenario.
The ideal scenario is to understand that succession is a long-term process, not a single one-time event. So ideally, it should happen 5 years before the succession actually takes place. You should engage in leadership of possible successors, find out what their talents are, what their characteristics and traits are, find out what their opportunities for improvement are, and then develop a leadership and development plan, and eventually arrive at choosing the appropriate successor. And then that's the first thing that you do. And then slowly allow that person to have more and more responsibility, have them start in, say, accounting or finance or operations. You want to move them around to various areas in the business so that by the time they're in full control in every department and they understand that business 100%. So it's extremely important to start early. What we should not do is have an emergency situation, especially with someone who has not worked in the business, like in a family business, especially important. You don't want a 20-year-old getting a call from mom saying, come home, dad's in the hospital, I need you to run the business. And no experience. They don't know the banker. They don't know the customers. They don't know the employees. They don't know the customers or suppliers. And what happens is if they have loans out, the banker is probably not going to feel too comfortable with a line of credit of a few $100,000 and a 19-year-old with no experience. And then the suppliers are probably extending supplier credit, and they're not going to feel too comfortable about this situation either. And probably the banker may consider pulling that line of credit. The supply, you know what, no more 30-day terms. It's going to be cash on delivery now for you. And the employers are probably not wanting to work for a 19-year-old. And then the customers may take the opportunity to switch to some other supplier that has been knocking on the door. So it needs to be thought of. It needs to be pre-planned, which is why this series is so important, in advance. And at minimum, it should, if done correctly, it should be a minimum of a 5-year process.
So, Keenan, are you speaking from experience?
Yes, experience on multiple levels. I've heard horror stories in my consulting practice and seen horror stories there, but I have a horror story from personal experience in my family business. Is now the time, Janice?
This is the time.
All right. Okay. Bear with me, everyone. It might take me a few minutes to get through it. So I spent 17 years at my family's business. We manufactured vitamins and sold them to drug and grocery stores. And we did extremely well. Dad, my brother, myself, we started it together. I got paid nothing for a year and a half. Then I finally got a raise to $1 a day, and we were working 6 days a week. We took Sunday off, like Chick-fil-A. And so 6 days a week for nothing for a while, $1 a day for a while, which put, $7 worth of gas in my VW van. And then I finally had some leftover money when I got paid $1 an hour. Minimum wage at this time was $2.65. So I paid my dues. One time at 3:00 in the morning, we're getting this huge order out, the biggest order in the company's history. And I turned to my dad and said, "Dad, why are we working so hard? I don't see the money." And he said, "Remember, we started with zero, right?" And we did. We bootstrapped it and started with nothing. And he goes, "Look around the warehouse." And the warehouse was full of finished goods, so full of inventory. And he said, "That's where our money is. It's sitting on the shelf. We need to go out and sell it and turn it into money, right?" And then he goes, "And besides, when will it be yours?" Oh, okay. So, that motivated me, and I buckled down and worked harder and everything, right? Well, it went well for quite a few years, but we had a bit of an issue the last couple years, especially. And my brother and I were 1/3 partners, so we split 1/3. So mom and dad had 2/3. My brother and I had 1/3. No profit sharing, just employment pay, but we were owners. The decision making was dad. Dad was authoritarian decision making. He made the decisions. Sometimes he would talk to us. I came home one day from working with my salespeople out in the field. I came back to the company, and my brother and my dad had bought another manufacturing company, and for $600,000, and it had gone bankrupt. And then they hired the chemist that came along with that company that drove it into bankruptcy. And this was done without mom being talked to, without me being talked to, things like that. And, that was problematic. That caused a few rounds like that. And then at the same time, we lost our biggest customer, Vaughn's. And that was 1/3 of our company that went away. And so now we're in a terrible cash flow crisis and went through a few rounds of pay cuts. And then dad came to my brother and I and said, "Hey, I need you to borrow on your house and, give me a cash infusion so that I can pay the mortgage on the building that we were in that my dad owned personally outside of the family business." It was a personally owned building. He paid the rent. The business paid the rent to him, and obviously had a tough time paying the rent. So here we are with this conflict of interest, basically. How do you think that went over when we went home and talked to our spouses about borrowing on, our houses to save dad's building, right? So we did not make it to the next generation. That we eventually sold out. And that's what caused my interest in business and studying succession and how we could have done things differently and prepared differently. We would have had some governance tools in there that governed how we made decisions, big decisions like that. Mom should have been involved in that decision. She owned, split 2/3 of the company with dad. I should have been involved in that decision. And possibly someone would have mentioned, "Hey, did you take a look at the hundreds of thousands of dollars it's going to take in inventory that's not going to turn very quickly because when you increase decision making, a group makes a better decision than an individual does." So we would have put in some governance tools. We would have had a family council. We would have had a few other things that possibly might have. I just wish I knew then what I know now, and hope possibly we would have been still in business together, because I do miss it. When a family business is healthy, you're making decisions in 30 seconds and you're implementing them 30 seconds later. But when they're not healthy, so we don't have a formal succession plan. It was just one day, this will all be yours and you're a part owner, but there was no profit distribution. It wasn't formalized. It wasn't put on paper. We did not have a buy-sell agreement. We didn't have buy-sell insurance. These are all important things to consider before some emergency situation happens. And since we weren't ready to sell, here's something, and I think the banker will appreciate this. We were not ready to sell. So we ran our business on a tax basis. We spent the money. We either invested it into the company or we spent the money so that we didn't get taxed. And so when we decided to sell out, we did not get a very high multiple. So I know now that we should always be making sure that our business is as healthy as possible, so that if something were to happen, an emergency were to happen, and you had to sell or have some kind of exit, that you would get a higher multiple for your business. So anyway, that's my horror story, and that's what got me interested in family business.
And we're all the better for it. Thank you, Keenan. Now, there's one of the things that you mentioned, and there are people out there wondering, what does that mean, buy and sell? I'm not buying the business. I'm not selling the business. So when you hear the term buy-sell agreement, I want you all to think business prenup, because that's basically what it is. Buy-sell is a legal term, but it's really a contract or an agreement that really talks about what's going to happen with the business partners, the family, and there are different ways of doing that. So I heard that little lingo, and I thought I'd share that with everyone. So thank you, Keenan.
You bet.
Calvader, as our existing business, have you ever thought about business succession planning?
Hi. So I have been asked to think about it. A few years ago, our franchise developer started to speak to us in the region about it, and I've gone to a workshop at our annual conference on it, but it's something that I haven't really paid too much attention to. And I was thinking, after you asked me to think about it, which is weird, think about something I've not thought about. I was asking myself why, and I think it really comes down to the fact that it's an uncomfortable thing to think about, because our businesses become an extension of ourselves and our identity. And for me, this is something I've done for 17 years, and it was my only thing that I've done in the United States apart from give birth. And he's 19, so he was 2 when I opened the business. So I don't know what else I would do apart from this. And I do have a bit of a workaholic gene. So although I'm involved in other things like nonprofits or the chamber, I like the fact that this business gives me a sense of purpose and direction every day. So I also feel that why have I not really looked into it is that I don't know. I mean, I was hoping perhaps my daughter, I asked her to join the business. She's now turning 26, straight after COVID. She'd just graduated May of 2020. And she worked for me in the office for a year. And it took another person, another business owner that's a friend of mine, to tell me that she hated it and that this is not something she wanted to do. And, I had not even realized that she was an introvert. I just thought she was going to take after me. And so that was, then I sat down with her and I asked her to look at what she wanted to do. And she's now on the path of wanting to be a school psychologist, and she's finishing doing her master's in that. And she works for me part-time from home, just doing our payroll for all the employees out working. So that's that. And then I have a 19-year-old boy whose personality is more outgoing, but I don't know at this point. I've watched too many clients with family-owned businesses and seen how the second generation, sometimes they're coerced or emotionally kind of coerced into it, and how unhappy they can be or how it doesn't work out. I told myself that I bought this business initially for myself to provide a financial vehicle for the family, and I don't want my children to think that they have to do it. So I've kind of kept that open. And then I have now had a young woman working for me for about 8.5 years, and she's the office manager, and I potentially think she could become a partner in the future. But I just feel she's only 28, and I think it may still be too early to make that decision yet. And so there's a lot of things in the air, but a lot of it comes down to the fact that I can't see myself doing anything else. Although I'm going to be 58 this year, I do have diabetes, and I've seen that it doesn't have to be a dramatic death. There are a lot of us, and you've talked about this, Janice, when I've heard you speak, it's things like strokes or a heart attack and things like that. So I did buy a building, or my office building, and that's kind of part of my, I suppose, would help my husband and I with retirement. But it's really something I feel kind of uncomfortable focusing on.
Right. You mentioned, your developer, having a conversation in the workshops at the conferences. You are in a unique position because you own a franchise, or you're a franchisee.
Yes.
So, have they made you aware? Can you tell me some of the differences that after that workshop about the difference between having a franchise versus someone who owns a business as a closely held business?
Yeah, that's a good point. I bought a franchise because I wanted a business that had less risk attached to it. Although when you trade in human beings, it's pretty risky as our product. But I think one of the key things is that although I can sell my business to somebody else, that ultimately it's a little weird. The franchisor can have they do have to be involved in the sale, at least to meet the person. But there have been some sales that have gone south because the existing owner sold to somebody that ran the business into the ground, or ended up bringing it into disrepute or closing it quickly. So I understand it from their perspective, they have a 40-year history and a lot of their brand on the line. And I think where they try to help us, or at least control the outcome, is helping us get a valuation of our business, and then helping us with legal agreements, perhaps even getting involved in some of the decision making on who buys the business. But ultimately, it's the individual owner's decision. And can I say, a lot of people bought businesses like this and then realize that they're miserable doing it. And so I know that they're taking it seriously now, because Express as a company is 40 years old this year. And so their first generation has started to retire out, and they're wanting, and I'm part of probably the second or third generation, at 17 years. And so they're trying to ensure that we're much better prepared, because Deborah talked about the other scenario, which is that a catastrophic thing can happen, or a life experience, and then you just find yourself, they find themselves with an office that has employees, because all of us do, that needs to be managed and run. So I haven't looked into it too deeply, but I know that they've started to make more help available, because it can go south very easily.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Deborah. As a business banker, and I know you all are intimately involved in the process of the succession planning, but what is it that a banker is looking for they want to make sure that's in place? And if you can share that, as well as any tips or ideas that you may have for a business owner and their banking relationship with that.
Thanks, Janice. From the banking or the lending perspective, when we try to work with our clients holistically, So it's not transaction, it's based on relationship. And as my colleague Bob, who always says, and I've heard him say many times, we're banking the family. So we're trying to, in Keenan's case, the family running the business, we're banking the family. We're one of the trusted advisors that works alongside with your CPA, with your financial planner, your tax planner, insurance, your ADP rep. You've got all these trusted advisors, and we try to be one of the consultative trusted advisors because we have a responsibility to share with our clients what we know, successes and not so good, to help them be able to continue with their business continuity and to be successful. Going out and meeting with a client, we've got, where we have certain products and stuff that we want to sell and that type of thing, but it goes beyond that. We really want to be able to help our clients and help them plan for now and into the future. From a lending perspective, as a banker, when we're talking about the succession plan and the handoff, we can be an instrumental part of that as well. Many of your larger banks have, through our trust division and through other areas of our bank, we can offer guidance and support and then work along with your trusted advisors to be able to ensure, again, the continuity. You've got the insurance in place. You've got a well thought out plan. And as Keenan said, sometimes that plan needs to be reviewed and changed, because things do change in life. As often as annually it should be looked at. It should be a living and breathing plan that you can update annually or as circumstances change. And it not only allows business owners to manage change, but it helps, and I think Keenan touched on this as well, keeping family financial interests in line. Understanding really where the business is at, where we see the business, and what do we need to put into place to ensure the continuity of the business. And then in the event of, that something does happen, how will that impact us? So it means you have to look forward. And as Palbinder said, it can be uncomfortable, Palbinder, it means we're talking about, gosh, when I pass, and for some people that is really uncomfortable, but it also means that we're looking at, what family is involved in the business, how do we want the business to be passed on, and what are the responsibilities we have as business owners to ensure that everything gets passed smoothly, so. And I know, Janice, you sit down and you talk with people, you touch on the buy-sell, the key man life insurance. There's so many other things that go into it just besides those, but those are some really key things that we touch on when we're talking to business owners as well.
Absolutely. I've learned a lot about different levels of banking and the support that's provided here. Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome.
Keenan. I know it's not a question that you had here, but I know you know the answer. We're in the Inland Empire. Is family business a real thing here in the Inland Empire? And if so, what are some of the tips and techniques that you can provide for succession?
Thanks for the question. It's amazing. There are so many family-owned businesses in the Inland Empire. So there's 387 metropolitan statistical areas around the country. And the Riverside San Bernardino, Ontario MSA is number one in the entire country for having the most family-owned firms. It's amazing. We don't have Fortune 500 firms headquartered in our area. What we do have is a massive quantity of small and medium-sized enterprises, the majority of which are family-owned. A lot of construction companies, a lot of manufacturing companies, as well as service businesses. And this is a great thing for the economy because family firms tend to treat their employees better. They lay off less in a recession. They actually survive longer. But that is when they are healthy, and they're not healthy, then they're pretty terrible. and then they're at risk of going bankrupt. A couple of scary statistics on this subject is the chances of a family business going bankrupt are higher due to a failed succession than they are due to the economy or their competitors. That's amazing. And then when other research shows that out of all of the businesses, family businesses that went bankrupt, 80% of them went bankrupt due to a fail. That's how important succession is. So you need to have a succession plan and or exit strategy, exit plan, just in case things do happen, and we never know when things are going to happen. So it's extremely important. So
Awesome. So one of the tips would be to have one and or the other. Wonderful. Thank you. Palbender, I don't know, since this is something that's new to you, which, like I said, is like most, what would you say to someone out there who is just getting started, or maybe they're listening with the awareness of a franchise? What if they have a franchise? Who should they talk to?
Oh, so that's a good question. I think they should talk to other franchisees bit about, and then especially the ones that have been in business for a while, and possibly people who, as Keenan was just saying, have exited out successfully. But there's actually attorney firms that also specialize in franchising as well, but that tends to be obviously a one-sided legal thing. I think it's a lot more complex than that. I would actually go to other people in that industry because they will know others who've either planned it or in the process of planning. And I've always thought, gosh, you know what? It must be like at least I have a manufacturing client who is actually, you know her too, but Janice, but she needs to get to that point eventually, and we had said 2 to 3 years is probably, and that's all the manufacturing clients I know have spent that long trying to exit out or doing it successfully. I just think talking to other people in the same industry, and if someone's interested in selling, often in franchising, it's existing franchisees who want to increase their footprint or have more units. That's what I've been seeing in Express, is that it's a lot of the growth is coming from existing franchisees who are either partnering with other franchisees and they're buying more offices.
That's a great tip. Thank you. And thank you all for answering these questions in such a detailed yet simple way. It is my passion to move this nation into understanding succession. And it really starts with a conversation that's very simple, very human, and just baby steps. Because Palbender, you're right, it is uncomfortable. I can't tell you how many professionals and business owners I've talked to this, but I'm not going to leave my business. I don't need a succession plan. I love what I do. I'm not going to leave my business. And I have to sit there and smile and go, oh, yes, you're going to leave your business. Oh, you will leave. And it takes a moment for them to realize what I'm saying. You don't want to walk around with the black umbrella, but you will leave your business. So this time has gone by so quickly. We wanted to leave a couple of minutes in case there's any questions. If you have any questions, we have our chat. Please put them in the chat. I'll give you a moment, and we'll see if anything comes up.
We'll also open up the room. We are going to enable talking permissions because once again, we want this to be a human conversation. If you do have questions, this is the time. I mean, and thank you for joining. This is a valuable conversation, and I'm grateful that we can start. And if you haven't started playing, time. Hello, Janine.
Hi.
Hi, Janine.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
We're fabulous.
Well.
Am I the only person visiting you today?
No, you're the only person with a question so far.
Oh, my question was, I didn't really actually have a question. I just was wondering if there was supposed to be like live video feed, but other than that, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment that I really enjoyed all of these stories. And I just learned so much, and so many ideas just popped into my head about different ways that, I can help clients protect their assets and their interests. So it's like crazy stories that, like, definitely my heart goes out to some of these things. And it's like, that's, really important to have these things in place. And I mean, Janice and I, we always talk about this stuff too. So it's really hits home when you get to hear actual things that have happened to folks.
Absolutely. Stories sell, is period. When other people feel like they're not alone, and they hear a story, it just helps them to anchor in information, and it resonates just a little bit better.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for that, Janine.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for inviting me to here today, because I learned so much. And I can't wait for the next sections of this series.
Awesome. This is the beginning. Now, Keaton, your hand is up. Does that mean you have a question?
I have a comment.
Okay. Okay.
Following up on why business owners don't think about succession, there's, it's pretty complex issue. So there's lots of different answers, right? But some of them are, take a look at the personality type of an entrepreneur, that hard-charging entrepreneurial founder that blows through barriers and makes their company a success, right? They're a success because of what they did, and now all of a sudden they're faced with the possibility of sitting on the porch in a rocking chair, or being put out to pasture, or imminent death. These are not fun subjects to think about, right? So they just want to kick that can down the road and delay. And that's why we run into some of these horror stories. And then on the family business side, what happens to a family that has a great business and they may have 5 children that are all super exceptional, 5 superstar children? Well, if you choose one over the other, you're going to have 1 delighted person and 4 that are not so happy. And so that becomes extremely complex. You're hurting your own family. You're hurting their feelings, right? So again, that's something that maybe mom and dad don't really want to get into. They'd rather just delay. And then we get into problems when some emergency happens. So just a couple of thoughts there on why they tend to delay. And then, lots of businesses don't engage in long-term planning. They're busy putting fire drills out, running fire drills, putting fires out, handling problems. And, success is getting through today to live tomorrow, and the time to plan. So that's another reason why.
It is another reason. Well, with that in mind, you made mention of something earlier about timeframes. When should I start? When should a business owner start thinking about succession planning?
Ideally 5 years. I was reading something the other day that said succession should be started as soon as you have the CEO role. You should be thinking of succession. They call it, the last great measure of a good leader. And when you leave, the business goes bankrupt or falls apart, then that really means you were not such a great leader if you didn't develop the people underneath you to take over, whether that's a non-family firm or a family firm. So that's very important. So ideally 5 years. It's a long-term process, and it will help the company succeed to either future generations of family or further on down the road.
Absolutely. I spoke to the MBA students over at Cal State San Bernardino, and the feedback that I got once, one of the students said, when Janice came to speak, I thought she was going to tell us that with succession planning, that we're planning to fail, and we don't want to plan to fail. So we don't want to plan succession. And then he realized, he said, actually, planning succession is planning to succeed.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. if I may add also, we're talking about the what ifs that threaten a business or a company, the unexpected, death, disability. But one of the other key messages that should be here as well, it's also part of taxation, taxes, taxes, taxes. And a well-executed plan, allows the assets to transfer and it plans for, those taxes and it really helps, so Palbender, you want to retire, comfortably, you want to pass on the business, but then there's a tax ramification also.
Right.
So that addresses the tax piece of it as well.
Yes. Sorry.
That's a great point. If anyone's a sports fan, the LA Dodgers that were owned by the O'Malley family, they had the Dodgers in their family. They were in Brooklyn, New York, and they're the family that had them way back then and moved them to Los Angeles. And, they loved the Dodgers. They lived and breathed the Dodgers. And when Walter O'Malley died, they did not do a good job of estate planning, tax planning, and succession planning. And they had to sell the Dodgers to pay their tax bill. So that's just traumatic. They, wanted to keep it in the effect situation. So yeah, trusts are extremely, extremely important. And then one last thing, and I'll be quiet. At the grand opening that we had for the Family Business Center in December, we had the Moss family of Moss Brothers Auto Group in the Inland Empire, and they celebrated 100 years and 4 generations. And when Glenn Moss took over from his father did a great job of succession planning, and it was an easy transfer for him and his brother. Well, I don't know how many months it was after the successful succession from Glenn and his brother from his dad, but his brother was killed in a tragic accident. And thank God that his dad had everything set up correctly. They had a buy-sell agreement. They bought out the sister-in-law, and now it's extremely successful, and the nephew is working there. So it's a really good success story of the importance of succession planning.
Absolutely. So as you can see at the beginning, we told you we'd have 3 amazing presenters and speakers. I want to thank you so much, Deborah, Keenan, and Palbender, for imparting your wisdom and sharing your thoughts. I think that there weren't very many questions or any questions in the chat, because you don't know what you don't know oftentimes, but just know that the questions that you have are the questions that someone else has as well. This is just panel number 1, which is absolutely amazing. And keep in mind, Brian will share our other panels. I will pass that over. But as your moderator, I'd like to thank you. For those of you who came in a little late, I am Janice Graham, bestseller of Leaving in Style, Business Succession on Your Terms. And I am thrilled to get this information out, and we're going to change the vision and the trajectory of the United States. Brian?
Great job. Thanks, Janice.
That's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being a part of this first series. This has been truly phenomenal. Deborah, your experience, your expertise, we really cannot thank you enough. These are the stories we don't have access to. This is you don't know what you don't know until you hear it. And so thanks for allowing us to hear it today. Palbender, thank you for sharing your story. Oh my goodness, the power of the story. And we will continue this conversation. Janice, Keenan, thank you for your expertise in pulling this panel together. We're really excited for the next 3 sessions to come. Once again, this is the beginning of the conversation. This is a series. And so the next set of our series will be coming up in May, specifically on May 4th. It will be the same time, 2 to 3 p.m., same link right here on Zoom. And we will be bringing in a wealth advisement panel. So we will be specifically focusing on wealth advisors and how they look at succession planning. And so we would really love to have you join. Following our May 4th wealth advisor panel, we will be having our CPA and accountant panel on September 15th. That will be a Friday, once again, from 2 to 3 p.m. right here on Zoom. And lastly, but most certainly not least, we will be in person on October 10th for the Connecting Faith and Business Summit, where we will be hosting the attorney and legal panel, bringing this all together under one umbrella. And so we'll continue to send out information in preparation for the next panel series. But thank you so much for being a part of this needed conversation. And of course, we are always here to support you. We welcome you to continue to be a part of our entrepreneur ecosystem. And we thank you for your time. I hope you have a great day and keep being phenomenal. Have a great day, you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.